Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be talking about 13 books that I hate. This video was inspired by a similar video put out by Bookish and another bibliophile reads, and I will leave links to both videos in the show notes down below. As a caveat, the 13 are books that I am sure I have finished. And so there will be no bails. Otherwise, I would be here all day because, like this year, I've like in the 80s on the number of books I've bailed on. And they are in no particular order. So as I go through the books and talk about them, I'm pretty sure the one that I hate the most will probably pop up. Although as I've gone over this list the last few days, I have a suspicion the 13th book is likely to be the one that I hate the most, but we shall see. Anyway, let's get going. So at number 1 is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This book doesn't really need an introduction. I'm pretty sure everybody knows the basic plot outline of Pride and Prejudice. I read Pride and Prejudice when I was 15. Like it was the winter of my 15th year, and I was bored. I mean, I managed to read it, but it was boring, and just I don't see the appeal of it. At number 2 is Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. This is an early detective novel about a young man who is heir to an estate who becomes suspicious of his new stepmother and gradually untangles her secrets. I absolutely hated reading this novel. It's just so frustrating. Although I suspect, while not necessarily Braddon's intention at the time, certainly I think that's the common reading nowadays is the implied sexism or overt sexism really is a bit much. At number 3, I have Letter to an Imaginary Friend by Thomas McGrath. This is a poetic novel that I read for a class. It's about a young man who takes a train, and this train somehow travels through time. So he kind of returns home every few years and just explores how his hometown has changed. And it's really bad. At number 4 is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is a post-apocalyptic novel in which a father and son travel trying to survive. It's dark, it's dystopic, it's slumming, and it's just really bad science fiction. At number 5 is Dryland's Inn by Felice Picano. This is a space opera that I read in 2006, and it's about this space polity called the Matriarchy, who is beset by a infertility bomb. Basically, robots are rebelling, and as a means to strike against the matriarchy, they've basically created a bomb that renders women sterile. In order to ameliorate this problem, a band of the protagonists and others are sent to try to find a scientist who may have the solution. And this is the worst science fiction novel I have ever read. It is just bad. Just the writing, the characterizations, it's a pastiche. It's slumming. I don't know necessarily if Felice Picano, who is a major voice in early gay fiction, was legitimately interested in science fiction or what, but it's basically like somebody writing surface level science fiction without really understanding the genre. So it's kind of like literary slumming, which is something similar you can throw at Cormac McCarthy, and maybe to a degree Margaret Atwood. At number 6 is Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. This is an unfortunately seminal classic comic book series that draws inspiration from the superheroes created by Charlton Comics in new forms, because at that time DC had bought those characters. And it's set in a rather alternate and dystopic 1980s, in which the world is on the brink of nuclear war, given the monopoly the United States has on the one true superhuman being, Dr. Manhattan. The novel, or the series, opens with the murder of another costume vigilante called the Comedian. This brings another vigilante called Rorschach out to investigate, and he begins to slowly uncover, initially thinking somebody's targeting former superheroes, that he gradually pieces together what's going on, and Watchmen stinks. Steve Donohue's criticisms are definitely accurate. Also, Michael K. Vaughan's criticisms. So, in addition to the main story, there are a number of digressions. There's a long-running subplot of another kind of comic book series called the Black Corsair or something like that. That is, you could do without. It's padding. And then there's some ephemera at the end of the issues, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've read it, that you can do out. And that ending is just atrocious. And it's just, if you really look closely, it makes no sense. So, I cannot stand Watchmen. At number 7 is Introduction to Queer Theory by Annemarie Jagose. I read this in 2003, 2004, maybe 2005, and it put me off of queer theory. I did not buy anything about what the book was about. And I read it largely because at the time I was an English lit major, and I had the intention of becoming a professor of English and being a literary scholar. And so I needed to know a bit about literary theory and various ones. And given some of my intended sort of areas of focus, queer theory would have been vital. But I'm not a huge fan of queer theory. At number 8 is Spider by Katarzina and Serguisz Michalski. This is a part of the Reaction Animal series, where each book looks at a different animal. Spider is largely a psychoanalytic bit of cultural theory that looks at largely negative depictions of spiders and arachnophobia, and posits, given that this is psychoanalytic, a psychosexual cause. Whereas arachnophobia could just as likely, if not more than likely, be the result of one's father throwing a live spider into your hair when you were a little girl. Anyway. At number 9 is Amberlough by Lara Elena Donelly. This is a recent work of speculative fiction. I hesitate to call it fantasy. It is set on another world, but there is no magic. And this world is rather inspired by Weimar Germany. It's basically has 3 protagonists. One is a secret agent who's tasked to investigate and eventually arrest the second main character, who, in addition to being a crime lord, is also a lead performer at a cabaret. The third main character is the second main character's co-worker, who also is a friend of his, and she's similarly a performer. And so the secret agent character is sent to investigate rising Nazi equivalent shenanigans in a neighboring state. And I did not like the first part of the book. Like it wasn't enough to make me bail. But that turn when the secret agent character is found out and forced to become a double agent, and everything after it, I completely hated the book. Just completely hated it. I wish I had bailed on it. At number 10 is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller. This is a seminal work of American theater. It's set in during the Salem witch trials, and is very much an allegory for the concurrently running House Un-American Activities Committee hearings. And I've never gotten into it. I think it's just, I really don't care for it. At number 11 is 1984 by George Orwell. Again, this novel does not really need much of an introduction. I read it for a class for which I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I wasn't actually taking the class. I was a student aide for that class. Although I'm thinking about it, I don't know why we read it, because it really didn't have much to do with the actual purpose of the course. But anyway, I hate dystopic fiction, and 1984 is one of the great examples of dystopic fiction, so I don't like it, and I didn't think it was well written or anything. So, at number 12 is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. LeGuin. This is a novel set on moon that is, it's a habitable moon rebelling against aspects of that, it's the planet it orbits government. And one of the characters has created a faster than light communications device. And he finds himself unsatisfied with his anarchic home government, so he sort of flirts with the various planet-side governments. I don't know if The Dispossessed is intended to be an ambiguous utopia or not, but I found myself just really hate reading it. And honestly, probably preferring one of the least, it's just, I didn't like it. And at 13 is The Last Sin by Katie Edwards, which is a recent work of urban fantasy. It's about a man who was once a member of an aristocratic family in this setting, basically it takes place in the city of New Atlantis, which was formerly the island of Nantucket, where the Atlanteans fled after the Atlantean World War, and the Atlantean government is a very aristocratic oligarchy. The main character, Rune St. John, was a member of the Sun Court, which 15 years prior to the beginning of the novel was destroyed. And he and his companion Bran are the only survivors. So they've been eking an existence, acting as a sort of an occult detective or mercenary. And during the course of the novel, Rune is set by his patron to find Adam St. Nicholas, who has been kidnapped. And during that investigation and rescue, it is discovered that Adam's kidnappers are intending a larger attack on the island. I initially really enjoyed The Last Son. It fulfilled an itch that I had, but subsequent rereadings has turned me against the book. There are a number of issues. For one thing, I really cannot stand Rune and Brand as characters. And the relationship between Rune and Adam is unsatisfying. And also, the character that I kind of gravitated towards in this one, Matthias St. Valentine, or Max, who is implied to have been abused by his family and before being placed in Rune and Brand's care, is further abused by Rune and Brand in a number of scenes, and it's never addressed. It's never really delved into, and the more I think about it, the more infuriated I am by that. And I've gradually soured on The Last Son, and also the entire tarot sequence, because so far there are 3 books. I think Katie Edwards is planning for 9 more, but as much as I'm kind of curious to see how things develop, I don't really want to read it again. So those were 13 books that I hate. And honestly, this was a very cathartic video. I needed to do this. So anyway, I will go and upload this video and put the 13 in the show notes, along with links to Bookish and another bibliophile reads his videos. And I will be back later this evening with 10 classics up to 1899 that I think you must read, which I know there are a number of other booktubers have done. And then tomorrow I might do the 10 from the 20th century, as well as some tags. So until I see you later this evening, thank you, BookTube. Have a great afternoon and stay safe.